Hello, this is Steve Powers. Today I'm going to do a video a little different than I normally do. This one is actually just an overview of an article that I did a while back. If you want to, I will link to that if you want to follow it. It's more in depth. It will cover step by step on how to draw rabbit from the beginning to the end. And the process that I used in it is basically a four-step process. But prior to that, you actually, or I have deconstructed that character and broken it down into its height based on heads, which is, using that is a common measurement. Take the character's head and how many heads height is that? And in real life, it's usually about 7.5 or 8. In this case, it's I believe what 4.5 head height. And you can see how I've broken it down. I've done the center line, contour lines. I've even done the armatures as well. So let's get to it, and I will just show you an overview of this process. Here is that deconstruction of the character. Again, um, this is just contour lines, center lines. I've broken the major elements of the character into primitives. I've put in armatures, a basic, very basic armature, which is the structural or bones of your character. That is unique in itself because it allows you to pose the character. But again, this is just a straight overview of this with all the different steps combined. Now, let's take a look at this with the details broken into a bit more manageable pieces. So from the construction portion of the dimensions themselves are probably the most important of those, I find anyways, because if it's too tall or too wide, it's not going to look right. And I don't care if you're an artist or just a viewer, it just doesn't look right because you've seen this character many times before. You can exaggerate legs and arms, some body movements. You can even stretch them, but you still need to keep the basic dimensions the same. So having an understanding like this, breaking it up into heads based from the top of the head down to the center point of the body is imperative. Here you can see where I've broken that the character down into primitives. Uh, Primitives is probably the best way to start because it does give you a general idea of the shape. So if you have a circle to base it from, you're not going to go outside of that circle unless you draw an oval, and then your primitive has changed, and of course your dimensions have changed. So breaking it down that way um, is a rudimentary approach to it. For me, it simplifies things. You can break it down and then break down those primitives into primitives as well as a compound structure. But really, what we're trying to do is just keep it simple. The next step is to create the skeletal structure of the character, the armature of the character. This is useful in reposing your character, to understand your character, or for animation. Um, it is a step that you could skip. It's not vital to the four-step method, but it is something nice to have that background, that little bit more of an understanding of the character. And this here is now the basic breakdown of the four-step method. You start with your line drawing. You want to get the dimensions correct. You want to get the large shapes correct. And it's not going to be perfect. So the next step is you're refining those lines, refining those shapes. And we're not adding values yet. We might give a little indication of a drop shadow or something like that. But it's not until the third step where we start adding in the values. We want to give the form add form to the character. So the way the light hits it, it's going to be the darker darks, but we start with the lights and we work up to that. Now, once we have the values established, we refine those values, refine the shapes, and we add even more detail, more fine detail at this point. We're adding in a ground plane, your drop shadows, you're adding a little bit of textures where you need it. And this is probably where most of your drawing is going to be. It's going to be in the final stages. You've already done the work, and now this is the fun stuff where you're just adding the little bit of detail. But learn the character, with the deconstruction of the character, and then um, use the four-step method to actually draw the character. And if you want to take it even further, the next step would be to add color. Well, hopefully this is helpful. Again, you have more detail in the article, and hopefully you enjoyed yourself, and I'll see you next time. You have a good day. Thank you.